Hello, my name's Jameson, and this is Ryan. We work together at the Indianapolis Inspection Center, and today we're going to demonstrate how to properly repair a break in a windshield. Now, before we get started, you'll notice that Ryan has a small mirror that has a suction cup on it, and what he's going to do is place that on the inside of the windshield, just behind where the damage is, and this just gives us greater visibility to make sure that we're doing everything properly. Okay, so now that glass mirror is in place, we can go ahead and attach our glass injector stand, which will hold our injector. So what Ryan's doing here is he's going to take just a small amount of that suction sealant. He's going to spread that around to each of the 3 suction cups. This helps obviously attach it to the glass, keep it in place, but also if you need to make slight adjustments, this allows you to slide it around a little bit. Now, as he actually applies it to the glass, he's pressing down on each of those suction cups individually. That's because if you try to just press down on all of them at once, you have to use a lot of pressure. You could potentially make that damage spread even further, making it worse. All right, perfect. Now let's move on to the next step. So before we go much further, Ryan actually needs to prepare the glass injector for use. He's going to take this injector seal lube he has here, and he's going to make sure that each part of that injector is properly lubricated and ready to hold a seal. So he starts with the main chamber ring, just making sure it's properly covered. After that, he moves on to the lower chamber of the injector, and he does the exact same thing, just making sure that it has a small amount of lubrication. Now, there's one more thing that's needed, and that's that small seal right on the end of the injector. It needs a small drop of the actual resin that we're going to use to fill the brake. So it will run completely around the ring and covering it, and then obviously it's time to reassemble the injector. Now, the injector is actually reverse threaded, meaning that you go right to loosen it and left to tighten it. So it may take some getting used to, but when putting it together, it's best to push it together, twist it to the right just to make sure it's lined up, and then go left to actually tighten it down all the way. All right, that looks great. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step. At this point, we want to fill the injector with the resin we need for the repair. So Ryan will take the injector, he'll turn that handle until the inner chamber drops about a 1/4 inch or so. Now he's going to take that bottle of resin from earlier and place about 4 to 6 drops right in the top of the injector. When that's done, he'll grab the white seal that goes on the end and just press that right into place. Now I'm going to pause here for just a second because this next part is very important. The key to any good glass repair is making sure that you don't leave any air inside that brake. And that starts with your injector. So what we need to do here is raise the resin that we just placed in that injector up to the bottom of the white seal on the end. So watch carefully, and what you'll see is as Ryan slowly cranks that handle, the resin will rise ever so slightly, and then he'll stop right as soon as it hits the bottom of that white seal. This makes sure that all the air is removed from the inner chamber of the injector, and it also makes sure that when you flip your injector over to put it in the glass stand, the resin doesn't just rush out and go everywhere. Now, what you'll notice on the side of the injector are some teeth, little ridges that line up with a small metal trigger on the glass stand. So when you go to insert your injector into the glass stand, you line these up, and this little trigger will grab onto the ridges on the side of the injector, holding it in place. Now you just want to slowly push that injector toward the glass until it just touches the windshield. Once it does that, you push it just enough until you hear it click one more time. This forms a proper seal between the injector and the glass. So at this point, we're ready to start our vacuum cycle, which is where we pull all the air out of the brake. So Ryan is going to carefully grab the injector, just to keep it from moving too much, and he'll slowly start reversing that handle. And what you'll see in your mirror as you do so is that white seal starting to pull away from the glass. It'll maintain its seal, but the injector is starting to act like a vacuum here. Remember, there was no air inside the injector when we started reversing that handle, so all the vacuum pressure that this is creating is working to pull all the air inside the brake up into the injector. And we're going to let that injector work for about 2 minutes. So now that we've finished with the vacuum cycle, we're going to move on to the next step, which is the pressure cycle. So once again, Ryan will carefully grab the injector, but this time he's going to crank that handle down. Now, like before, you're going to see that white seal change, but this time you want to crank it down just until that white seal starts to spread out and pancake a little. Now, remember that we have already pulled all the air from this brake, so the resin has a much easier time of entering every little crack. Had we not pulled every bit of air out, the resin wouldn't be able to make it through the entire brake because the remaining air would be blocking its way. This is why you may need to do more than one cycle of each step. Maybe a vacuum, and then a pressure, and then another vacuum, and another pressure. Every brake is different, it just depends on how it's reacting. And just like the vacuum cycle, we're going to let this pressure cycle work for about 2 minutes. So the brake has finally filled, and now it's time for Ryan to move on to the next step, which is curing the repair. This is the curing light. Now, as you can see, it's designed to go right over the glass injector. It has a suction cup to hold it in place, and then you just press the small button on top, and it will start a 60-second curing cycle. And the reason we leave the injector in place while we cure the resin is because resin actually shrinks while it's being cured. But if while it's curing we leave pressure on it, it actually makes up for any shrinkage that could occur. So now that everything has cured, Ryan is going to remove that light from the windshield. He's using a flathead screwdriver just to loosen the suction cup. You want to avoid using anything sharp like a razor blade here, because if you end up cutting that suction cup, it will no longer hold a seal. Once the light's off, we want to go ahead and remove the glass injector. So Ryan will reverse that handle just enough to remove pressure from the impact point. He then will pull back on that metal trigger on the glass stand, releasing the injector. Then he can come back with that same tool and remove the glass stand itself. What we're left with is a small impact point where the brake originated. We call this a pit. To fill that, Ryan's going to take his pit filler and place a small drop of it right above the pit. As it drips down into the pit, he'll place a small plastic film tab near the pit and let it fall onto the pit, making sure not to press on it. The resin will spread out and cover the pit, which means it's time for our final cure. So once again, we're placing the curing light over the pit and press the button to start another 60-second curing cycle. Just like before, we'll remove the curing light and then we can take care of that film tab. As you can see, Ryan is using a razor blade to lift the corner of the film tab and then slowly peeling it away from the glass. Now he takes that same razor blade and begins to remove the excess pit filler by scraping it back and forth across the glass perpendicular to the surface so he can actually avoid lifting that filler out of the impact point. Then we'll take a clean towel and wipe any excess pit filler from the surface. To make sure the impact point shines like the rest of the glass, we're going to take some pit polish on the end of a cork and just take a minute to polish that impact point. And after wiping that clean again, you are left with a quality repair that is virtually invisible. Again, my name is Jameson. Thanks also to Ryan. We want to thank you so much for watching and really hope that this helps.